25. A call to order a work session of the Woodland Park Planning Commission. It's Thursday, August 14th, 2025 at 8:26 p.m.
So good evening. Thank you, guys. Again, I apologize. My voice is really very tenuous here this evening, so I'll do my best to enunciate and not cough too much. And I am speaking a little slower because it seems to be less aggravating to my voice. So just bear with me. CJ should have handed you all a handout, and that's what we're going to talk about this evening. Specifically, the state had adopted laws in their 2024 legislative session. House Bill 1007 takes or addresses residential occupancy limits and the fact that those can no longer be regulated based on familial relationships. And then the other one is House Bill 1152, which pertains to accessory dwelling units. The original desire was to actually incorporate these required changes as part of our larger code update. But unfortunately, that code update is taking much longer than anticipated. And so to not be out of compliance with state law and the governor's office, decided to bring forward an ordinance specific to these two codes that would get that taken care of. So what you have in front of you this evening, and of course not wanting to surprise you all, so that's why we're doing the work session. So what you have in front of you, that handout, is a strikeout and underline from our current regulations, what that would look like in an ordinance that would amend these specific provisions of the city regulations. I did have opportunity to have someone from Nina's office review all this. So it's already had a legal buffing, so to speak. So it's past that threshold for compliance with state law. And a lot of this you're going to recognize from our prior conversations related to the code update. So specifically on the first page, definitions to add are household and then household living. Like I said, you've seen both of those before. And then that need to delete the definition of family out of our current regulations. And then the next section is where we start into the accessory dwelling units. And our current definition of an ADU actually has basically three definitions kind of incorporated into one. And this is where you see those broken apart to accessory dwelling unit, a habitable living unit, and then the primary unit, and what those refer to. There's some small modifications that occurred here so that it's ideally a little bit more clear and consistent. So,
Karen?
yes, and please speak into the microphones. I've got my volume all the way up, and I occasionally have a hard time hearing y'all.
Karen, when is a large number of people in a given building not a household? Is there such a, if a drug cartel sends 30, 40 people up and they're all living in the same house, are they in a single housekeeping unit? If there's somebody cooks for all of them? Or, I mean, the answer is there is no such thing as a dwelling that doesn't have the people in it being a household.
I've not thought about it that hardly. I just know that what we've got doesn't work. And what constitutes a household?
If somebody thinks there's some restriction coming from saying a household, it seems to me they're kidding themselves.
I'm sorry, say that again, sir.
Somebody thinks that referring to a household creates some kind of restriction. It seems like we're kidding ourselves. That person is kidding themselves. Any number of people occupying a dwelling as a single housekeeping unit.
It seems like this is going in the less restrictive direction as what the intent is.
Exactly.
To the extreme, perhaps.
Household means whoever's living in
Whoever's living in that
dwelling
single
unit.
family dwelling unit.
Whoever's there is in a household, pretty much.
If you're in a house, you're in a household.
Exactly.
Is that actually regulated through the building code?
Not the way you want it to be. The building code, it looks at things when it's being constructed. It doesn't regulate ongoing occupancy of the structure. So, once the apartment building, the house, whatever is built, the CO is issued. That's kind of where the building code steps out of it. Some communities adopt what's called a property maintenance code that then potentially has some limitations in it in terms of the number of peoples that can occupy a dwelling unit. But even that number is still way higher than you want it to be. Both of these bills are not things that a community ideally, especially one that prides themselves on home rule and establishing rules for our own individual community. This is not what we want, but this is what we are forced to deal with. So a tool, even though it may not be that great, i.e. the definition of household, is better than nothing. So this is the best I'm able to bring to you. We've talked about these before. The definitions of household and household living come out of the state model code. So that's what I'm showing you, is just stuff that you have already seen, that ideally we need to move forward with. And like I said, I'd like to take care of these particular issues way sooner rather than later, so that we're not out of compliance with the law.
Do we have an existing definition for household, or do we need to add that as well?
This is what we
It's on the
reviewed.
front.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Starts with that.
I thought that was coming from the state law.
And it was.
That is the new.
Okay, that is
That's,
verbatim from the
that's
state law.
being added,
Question mark?
definitions to add. And
Yeah,
then
sorry.
And the words that have a double underline are things that are being added. Things that are shown with a strikeout through it is what would be deleted.
So we did have previously a definition for household, and that's what this looks like.
No, it's got a double underline, so that's being added.
Well, I mean, through our code revision.
Yes, you've already looked at this through the code revision. This is what's in the code revision.
And we were told at that time, this is the state definition.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm seeing them both now, they're the same.
now,
That message hasn't changed. I've just pulled it out so that we can deal with this particular issue now rather than at a later point.
gotcha. The next question is, you mentioned the word, the state is forcing this upon us.
Probably a little harsh, but yeah.
What's the penalty to us if we decide not to follow the state mandate?
I believe they are, as usual, the potential to consider us ineligible for grant funds.
That's pretty hefty.
Yeah,
It has the potential to be, yes.
I assume you tried to enforce this could go to district court, I'd imagine.
And that legal fee, legal.
And we pay their legal fees when they won.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're fundamentally,
I don't think.
like, none of the breaks
I'm
the
not
back.
every night's worrying about the definition of household and how many people are gonna move into the neighbor's house.
And perhaps through local rule, we could apply some limit, but that would be a new proposal for a new ordinance and not really within the scope of implementing this state regulation.
Yeah, it's the reason you're bringing this for us, Karen, so you can slip this language into the ongoing draft of the recodification.
That's redone. This is for the current code.
This is that.
Okay, the language is already in the current code. The problem is timing. So rather than keep this with the rest of that package, that I don't know what the timing is going to be to ultimately, ideally get that adopted, whether or not we're able to do that by the end of this year, or if it happens in early 2026. The issue is timing. So with both of these things, it was stuff that ideally should have happened by the end of July or June, I think it was, of this year. So we're a little behind, and rather than be a lot behind, decided we should move forward talking about these particular topics to bring forward an ordinance that amends our existing regulations specific to House Bill 1007 and House Bill 1152, both from 2024. So that's what we're talking about, is we're trying to narrow things to just this item, these two items, to address state law changes so that we are consistent with state law. And then
Yeah,
when we do see the overall, assuming the change gets adopted, this will be then inserted into that larger restructured code that'll go through a separate hearing process. Since the numbering and all kinds of things really get changed with that. But to get these two things taken care of, that's why we're talking about that specifically this evening.
Or forget, can I make a correction to this?
Sure.
The definition, the second definition from the bottom of the first page, habitable dwelling unit. I think it says habitable living unit. I think it should be habitable dwelling unit, if it's consistent with the previous definition.
We can make that change. Okay.
Yeah, that was a change in the paragraph right before it.
Paragraph before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
really.
quite show on
I'd like to read this before I say it's great, but I mean, generally, okay.
Well, and that's why it's just a work session. I wanted to introduce it, kind of go over it with you all. And those under accessory dwelling unit, those three things that you see split apart that look like three definitions, they're currently all mushed together under one definition of ADU. So they're technically three different things, and that's why you see it split apart a little more articulately.
So on that use table that you provided us, Karen, we show the word, the notation of PC, which we change that here, or you want to just keep this going until we do?
That's as it currently shows in our use table at this point in time. I'm proposing no changes to that. Nina's office did not flag anything that needed to be revised, because under the state law at this point, basically anywhere you can locate a single family home, you are required to allow an ADU unit. And that's what this does.
Okay, when you say allowed, you mean both permitted and conditional, or just permitted?
The permitted conditional refers actually more to the processes. I believe it refers more to the process associated with citing the single family home in those commercial districts. And then also I think it's kind of a trigger to go and look at these other regulations associated specifically with the ADU.
Yes, we don't have the state regulation in front of us, so I guess perhaps the question is, does the state tie our hands and we couldn't deny that if we wanted to? Or
Correct.
Well, then it's permitted.
Is on these uses, PC in the table appears in two of several commercial zones. The state statute makes a difference between neighborhood commercial, community commercial, service commercial, and CBD. Two of them can be permitted, must be permitted, and the others don't.
That is our current table. That is, and I'm not proposing any changes to it. And right now, that's where we allow a single family home to be sited or located, is in those particular zones. And therefore, an ADU is something that can potentially be located next to that single family home.
This may be a place for an asterisk that anywhere a single family home is located, ADU is permitted.
That's funny. I didn't realize that neighborhood commercial, community commercial don't allow single family homes, but service commercial does. That seems odd. I'm looking at table. The table's got PC and, oh no, it's one more column. No,
It's split between the two pages, unfortunately.
Sorry, crossing pages, the columns aren't
We
there.
have to flip it.
Sorry about that.
It's just the way it fell.
And because there's no change, you're not gonna see this in the ordinance that comes forward. I was gonna leave that out since there's no change to the table.
That's just for our edification.
Yes,
I'm looking at the use table and out of my notebook. And I've always assumed that that particular table is correct. And it only shows single family permitted in the SR, UR, and
Mobile
the
home.
mobile home. Is our table wrong?
hang on. I gotta make sure I get,
I didn't know we have the.
Can't remember, where's the damn use table?
It is at 1809 090.
All right, thank you.
okay. It's down further, Larry. Number 6. 1 or 2 dwelling units
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
or duplex per existing platted lot within a single structure in a commercial zone of NC, CC, and CBD. That's where you see that single family home is permitted conditionally in the
Not in service commercial.
CC and CBD
Right.
zones.
Okay,
Right,
all right, no,
Okay.
that looks right.
we're
Okay.
tracking, thanks.
It's in 2 separate lines. Yeah.
So I agree. I think we ought to not complicate things and just try to keep it. This is what our existing code says. This is how it needs to be amended to meet the state requirements. And
Well, it does
Leave
flow
it as it
because if
is.
we don't,
Well,
if we don't allow the single family house, then the ADU doesn't get to ride with no, there's gotta ride along with a single family house, so.
let's get her done, so this is
Yeah.
one last subject we don't have to explain, then we changed something as part of the recodification, and how do you feel about
It tracked,
families or lack of families, or
it tracked.
get somebody go.
Exactly. So to carry forward into the next section, 18.33.135, this is where we have the standards specific to accessory dwelling units. And as we scroll down further, you're going to see quite a few strikeouts in there. And I know this community went through a lot of time and effort to put all these requirements in place. But the state has decided they're no longer necessary or desirable. So our purpose statement stays the same. Our permitting for an ADU is still required. But what we cannot require anymore is parking spaces. So basically somebody can come in and I want to add an ADU and I'm not going to add any more parking spaces and we get to say, okay. Now then, the caveat that we counsel people with quite a lot, or even starting the conversation is, what do you intend to do with the ADU? Is it a long-term rental, or do you want to reserve the option of using it as a primary residence short-term rental? If that's the case, the STR regulations can require parking spaces. So we encourage folks to think about that now as part of what you're putting together, just to preserve that option for yourself and your property. So to cite an ADU, you do not need to show parking, but at a later point, when there is an ADU and somebody wants to use it as a primary residence short-term rental, that's when they need to be able to show all the required parking per the STR regulations.
so Karen, if I understand you correctly, the crossouts in the proposed regulations are superseded by state requirements and can't be changed.
Yeah, they're required by the state changes.
And you're only changing them now just to comply with the state code.
Right.
Correct.
Okay,
I've got a little caveat at the end, but for this part, yeah, the vast majority of everything we're gonna plow through right now is for compliance with the state.
yeah, because it kind of contradicts what you said a few minutes ago when you said, look at this as being you know, what the current code says right now. And that, and this is how we changed it through our revision process. So,
We did not touch ADUs very much. In fact, if really didn't touch them at all, because everybody was comfortable with them because they were fairly a newer section of the code. So, and knowing that it was going to need some state changes. So this is where the state changes are coming through, is you've not seen the impact of those previous or before this evening.
okay, well, just wanted to have you clarify. Thank you.
So the next couple of sections on this page are pretty much intact. It's when you get to section C, where we had an annual permit renewal. That's something that's really not followed. People don't come in with their annual affidavits. We've not hounded them and really looked for that. And it really doesn't, at this point, doesn't make a lot of sense. Because you'll see in the standards why, but because we had some density separation limitations, those are no longer something that we can do. So that annual ADU is a way to help keep track of who's actually using things. Does it potentially open up the ability for somebody else to do an ADU if one's dropped off, that kind of thing. So that's a moot point. So that's why this is recommended to be deleted. There's really no need for the annual permit or registration, especially when somebody's putting quite a bit of money into making physical changes to their property to establish this type of use. So under the standard section, the good news is we get to keep our design requirements that talk about existing facades, roof pitch, siding, windows, you know, making sure that harmonizes, whether it's an accessory structure or an addition to the main structure. When it comes, I'm sorry, any questions on that one? So when it comes to owner occupancy requirements, we're limited to only being able to require the owner being an on-site occupant at the time of permitting of the ADU. Once that ADU is permitted and established, that's it. It's done. That's how you see that being modified. The restriction on subletting can no longer be there. And then, you know, any limitations about it running with the property owners, that kind of thing is no longer valid. So that's why you see that language all struck. With regard to the size of the ADU, we previously had a limitation in there that it could not be more than 40% of the single family dwelling's primary unit. And so working with Nina's team, the good news is we do have some limitations that we can keep there in place. And so the recommendation was to require all of these following things. So the size is subject to the following. In no case that ADU is to be larger than the primary unit's total floor area. It cannot be more than 800 square feet. It cannot be less than 300 square feet. Oops, I forgot a parens. And then the fourth item is that limitation on 2 bedrooms can still remain in place. So the next one that I was kind of surprised by is we had that limitation on the number of occupants being no more than 4 persons. That can stand. So I say we run with it. Item 5 here, that's where it really spelled out parking requirements, so that gets struck. Item 6 was the density controls I spoke about, where we had originally wanted at least 300 or 600 feet separation between ADUs, depending upon the zone district. We're no longer able to do that, so that's why that gets deleted. The number of ADUs per lot is tightened up or just clarified a little bit in terms of cleaning up language. There's no more than 1 ADU per lot were permitted. So, home occupations or limitations related to that can stay. Item 9 was, language encouraging barrier-free ADUs to accommodate people with disabilities.
Karen,
Question,
does it mean no more than one lot per AUD where permitted? I mean, if we permit one or where there's a lot, or what's permitted?
No more than one ADU per lot where permitted.
What does the where permitted mean?
That's what the attorney told me to add. We can delete it. Nina can laugh.
Because I think it just means back to the use table, but it's not it's not fatal if you want to take it out. I think it just clarifies because you always want people not to be confused and like point to this section, but then you got to point to the use code.
Would you like me to delete the where permitted? That's a yes or no question.
Well, if we don't know what it adds to the,
So just to explain, some, as we know, some zones don't permit ADUs, so we don't want people to point to this and say, look, I have one per lot, but then the use table is, so it's just to
Okay.
clarify for the average person.
use people, maybe it was where allowed. Or now they're allowed everywhere by the state ordinance, right? Where there's a single family residence. That's kind of what it's doing.
Correct.
Right, but remember we just looked at the use table and there's not P on in every zone. So it means where they are permitted, there
If
should
an
be no more
ADU
than
is
one.
permitted, there's no more than one per lot. That's what's meant to say, apparently.
Yeah.
Which you can probably drop, but if you put it in, write it like that.
We can change the order of the sentence.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll do that. I'm making notes here, so bear with me. Okay, anything else on that page? For that section?
Are non-functional ADUs subject to review?
Hang on, we're getting there. So legal non-conforming ADUs, that first language, number 1, is in the current code. Number 2, they're certifying non-conforming ADUs, was a way to just acknowledge if somebody has one. And I want to say there's like 12 or 18 of them or so in the city. I'm just making it very clear that they need to go through this process and they can come into compliance. I believe a lot of the reason those were non-conforming, or at least some of them, was because they couldn't meet the distance separation requirements. So that was kind of why they were on a list as to why they could continue.
So-
Um,
what if they don't get certified and remain non-conforming?
They remain legal non-conforming, they can continue to exist as they are.
To be
With the elimination.
Or is there
Excuse
anything?
me. With the elimination of that distance separation requirement, we can do an outreach to those particular property owners and encourage them to get into a conforming status to help reduce the number of those. So that's really more an administrative
No,
application of the regulations that doesn't affect a whole lot. I mean, literally, there's like 12 to 18 of these things.
but if they're non-conforming, can they not be occupied, or is there some?
No, they can be used. Yeah, they're already in existence, they're in use. They don't comply with the rules, for whatever reason, because they were there before the rules. So they're allowed to continue. This makes it very clear that they can come into compliance if they go through the application process.
Not opposed to it, it just doesn't seem to change anything.
No, it really doesn't, so that's why it's
It's an important provision for the ones that have them now.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on that?
Nope.
All right, sections F and G. This is an attempt to deal with situations that we suspect are starting to creep in out there. As people can no longer STR their properties the way they want to, it becomes desirable to look for other streams of income. So, if my house is big enough, I can maybe kind of get something together that sort of looks like a kitchen. I can rent it to, the lower level with, 4 bedrooms to 4 different people, without calling it an ADU. So the terminology here in F and G really is to be helpful to staff, to deal with those weird situations that come up when typically in an enforcement scenario or a complaint scenario from somebody. That or in the course of doing other permitting of something, sometimes there's plans that come on and they're like, oh, no, that's my theater room with the fully functional kitchen so I can warm my pizza
Wet
rolls
bar.
and do
Wet bar.
dishes. I'm sorry, somebody's talking, I can't hear you.
It's a wet bar.
Yeah, the wet bar, the whole, well, let's go full kitchen, because I don't want to be restrained. So it gives us language and tools to potentially address some of that, to try and deal head on, it's like, hey, it quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck, we're calling it a duck, I don't care what you call it. And that's what this language is really meant to do, is to help us at that staff level and go, no, it's a duck. It's an ADU. So that's why I've got this here.
Was this language you were able to borrow from someone else, some other city, or did we come up with this? Just curious.
I'm good, but when possible, you always steal the wheel. Nina's team member actually had prepared this for a different municipality. And it's I guess been adopted there, and I thought it was very tightly well written, that pretty
It
much
makes it more
addresses all of our
defensible if there's
concerns.
a precedent.
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
It makes it more defensible if there's a precedent.
Yeah, it really does give us at a staff level something to push back with. Because I've whined a lot the past week about I need tools. We don't have tools. This is a tool.
Let me just ask a question.
Sure.
These other living arrangements that are happening more common nowadays, mother-in-law place, single parent daughter with a child living with the parents, and they make some adjustments to accommodate. Is this all gonna be, is that all kind of stuff that's now this accessory dwelling unit? Even though it's family members living in the same house?
Depends
that's-
upon how they're doing it. If you've got the daughter and grandchild, in extra bedrooms in the house, but everybody's still using, and there's a bathroom, but everybody's still using the same kitchen. That's just a lot of people in one house. A lot of times it's really that, oh no, here's a separate entrance. We'll make you a little kitchenette. You don't ever have to see us. That's an ADU.
Okay. They're sharing space, it's not an ADU. If it's separate space, that helps make it more of an ADU.
Which is where G talks about things there, that a functional ADU, it's presumed to be an ADU if it's got a separate exterior or interior entrance. There's sleeping areas suitable for overnight occupancy. There's a bathroom with a toilet and bathing facility. And then there's a kitchen or kitchenette with a sink and cooking appliance or electrical outlet intended to support one. Because you see that sometimes it's like, well, here's a 220 plug, but oh no, we're not putting a stove in. The plans show a counter, but an outlet, and then under the cover of darkness, a stove moves in after the CO has been issued for the area.
Do not have a separate interior or exterior entrance. You had 4 walls and no door.
I guess it's no door.
Does it have to have a door? I'm just, A
I don't
separate
know.
interior or exterior entrance, it's hard not to have.
I'm glad Karen's regulating and managing this and not me. Or whoever's
You know, and
doing.
somebody always wants to push the semantics, so, I mean, some of it's stating the obvious, it's, you know, it's helpful the way it is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in other people's homes where they have an apartment downstairs and they come in through one doorway and then that splits and then there's interior doors that separate the living spaces for the main and and in this case, the ADU, so.
If somebody lives in the living room, then it's not an ADU, 'cause it's not a separate.
Correct.
I don't think that couch is really intended for.
I can't hear you.
Yeah,
Don's too far from the mic.
yeah, I was just saying, I don't think a couch counts as sleeping arrangements for long term.
This is good, Karen. I like it.
Yeah,
Very good.
I'm thinking just keep moving ahead.
You wanna put it in an ordinance and get it to us in the next available date?
Well, I was a little proactive and I already noticed it for your next meeting. To keep it moving, because it's always easier to, you know, take something off an agenda than to add it in late. So I do have that already on your agenda for the 28th. I apologize, I will not be on site for that meeting either, so I will be attending via Zoom, but that is the intent, is to have that ordinance in its entirety in front of you for a consideration and recommendation to city council.
And if you could please include the House bills that apply in the material, that'd be very helpful, thanks.
The bills themselves,
Yes.
sure.
What?
did somebody's a go.
Well, I mean, if.
A
we're
link to it
making
at least.
changes
Yeah.
Because this House bill tells us to, I'd like to know what the House bill tells us to.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of them this year.
Well,
No,
no, these are from 2024. And the ADU bill has quite a few other things in there that are not, they're ancillary, but they're not specific to what does it need to look like in your city's ordinance. To that end, like I said, what you have in front of you is already had a legal scrub and has been identified that yes, this meets the standard that we need to meet for the state. So yeah, we'll get you those bills so you can certainly look at them. But in terms of the applicability, have we passed muster? We've already got a legal blessing that says this takes care of that.
Okay.
So that's all I had for you this evening. As I said, obviously, no good comes from surprising you all at a public hearing. I know I wouldn't like it either. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we had a work session to talk about this and highlight for you what this looks like. I will make those couple of small changes we talked about. Yeah, we'll get it on the docket for a hearing.
Hope your voice doesn't drop any lower.
I know.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, no, I caught something at the end of last week. And I'm pretty much over that part of it. Now it's all the air quality and smoke issues that are really
For the
doing-
For the record, Karen, this is CJ. The tech here in the back keeps doing the reverb thing. Remember a few months ago, this happened in the hearing room, so you sound like you're speaking through a voice box and then it cuts in,
Yeah.
cuts out, cuts in, so.
Yeah, I think it's mostly your internet connection. You're.
No, the
And
tech
other
here,
factors contributing.
yeah,
yeah.
we'll submit a help ticket tomorrow to our IT department because this has happened in the past, so we want to get that fixed, so.
Well, and you sound slightly Mickey Mousey there, CJ.
You just need to
There's-
listen to the recording after the meeting.
Yeah.
You'll laugh.
Oh, no. Oh, God. But yeah, no, the smoke has been doing me in, so I've been holed up with all kinds of air filtration and yeah, no, it even in a closed-in house, it smells smoky and it's like, ugh, stop it.
Can't think of the singer with a real deep voice. For now.
You know what really bothers me about this? It's a state mandate.
Yeah.
Colorado has been very fortunate with its state land use laws, and it was a permitting operator, so it was optional for the communities to go ahead and do zoning. It wasn't required. There's so many of these things that were built on the premise that if you're gonna do this, it's going to be under local control. It's going to be, so this is what the community desires, this is how the community has decided to move in that direction. I don't like the direction of having state controls mandated to the local communities to do zoning or land use controls. I think land use controls should be at the point closest to the citizen. And that is local government. And from that point, then it's what the community should be. It's not what the state thinks the community should be. And then
They're pulling the state importance on all these.
I understand that. And
It's not, it should be, like you said, it should be up to the individuals.
well, it's all under the premise that we gotta do whatever we can on the state level to encourage affordable housing. And certainly these things for dwelling units, for occupancy, for households, so on and so forth, is all based on that. If we take this away from the local governments, they can't regulate it. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm not completely sold completely that I want to support this. I will be certainly thinking about it a long time before the hearing starts. But I also understand the predicament that the city may be in if we don't follow what the city has the state has mandated. But I'll be thinking about that.
So to that point, sir, I understand. So when I was working on sorting this out with the legal team, I was very relieved to see that we could still have the size limitations in place that we do. Because there was a brief second in there where I had a heart attack thinking that if the only restriction is that the ADU needs to be smaller than the primary dwelling, we've got some pretty big houses in Woodland Park. So if you've got a 5,000 square foot house, then you've got a 4,500 square foot ADU. That's a little crazy. So no, that's not the case at all. So that's why you see the ordinance, is consistent with what we've already have in place, but still limiting that the ADU is limited to that 300 to 800 square feet.
So I guess it doesn't help if it's a basement or attic space, but if it's a separate structure or an addition to a house, then the total footage limits do apply, correct?
It's still, the ADU is still limited to that 300 to 800 square feet.
Well, I meant like if there are, depending on the size of the lot and the zoning, the footprint of a house can only be so big. The ADU should be additive to that when making that determination. Is that?
We look at the existing house, how many square feet are there? So if it's 1,000 square footprint house, it's a small house to start with. We look at, so the proposed ADU, is it smaller than that primary unit? Yes.
Well,
Is it?
not quite what I'm getting
Let
at.
me,
Okay, go ahead then.
if it's between 300 and 800 square feet, that works. If it's no more than 2 bedrooms, it meets all of those criteria. So it could be a 600 square foot, 2-bedroom ADU that gets sited on the property in addition to that existing 1,000 square foot house.
But if, let's say for the purpose of this discussion, that the zoning size limit for that lot is 1,000 square feet. Can now they build a 500 square foot ADU in addition to 1,000 square foot primary residence?
We don't have that kind of limitation in place.
Go ahead. What'd you say? Sorry.
We do not have that type of limitation on size of an existing house. we don't have, minimum or maximum, floor area requirements, in our zoning regulations for siting a single-family home. Some of the HOAs have those requirements, but the city's ordinance does
So
not.
all we have in that regard are setbacks.
Correct. And
Okay.
lot coverage.
All right, well. So if
you
I'm
got-
at my
you got
lot coverage
townhouses,
limit,
then townhouses, and you try and put a big extension in the front of it, you're always gonna run into, assume setback requirements that still apply. Doesn't override those. That's the kind of thing you're thinking about.
okay,
I'm assuming it can't.
well, I was thinking more like coverage, lot coverage limits.
Yeah, no, and to that point, I don't know that that's called out that way. I'm going to, touch base with Nina's team again and, see if we can get that, added in there so that that's also clear that it needs to fall within that limitation.
Yeah, that's what was hoping. Okay, thanks.
I think, that it, needs to comply with existing setbacks and stuff, but I'll make sure lot coverage is also clear if we can do it.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Sure.
And then you could have non-conforming legal ADUs. Anyway.
So when this is brought forth in the form of an ordinance, you're just gonna have the additions and strikeouts and that'll be all right.
You'll see pretty much what it looks like here. I'm gonna delete the table. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much what you see here.
I was just thinking along the less, sometimes less is more.
So, Nina's team may decide to modify something further, but, yeah, there's also just that transparency for the public in terms of what's going on. Yeah, because it's potentially more complex to, to write the ordinance, but, we'll make sure it works. We'll make sure it's clear, so. And that's all I had for you guys this evening.
All anyone has, I trust. Let's adjourn.